One major development going on now involves more to do with Rachel Zegler and her attitude towards South Park Studios and Paramount after learning about what they are planning for their upcoming special.
Okay. Mom, I had a dream that I was replaced by a diverse woman.
Something strange and electrifying has been happening in the land of fairy tale remakes. A whirlwind so intense that even casual moviegoers can't help but notice. In one corner stands Disney, the legendary studio known for turning classic stories into generational touchstones. In another corner, you have a rising star named Rachel Zegler, initially hailed as a bold new voice for modern audiences. Hovering over them both, like a mischievous phantom, is South Park, the animated juggernaut famed for skewering anyone and anything that stumbles into the cultural crosshairs. At the center of it all is the Snow White 2025 remake, a project meant to breathe fresh life into one of Disney's oldest and most cherished masterpieces. Early on, excitement was sky high. Fans wondered how the remake would honor the 1937 classic's timeless charm while also addressing shifting societal views. But as the spotlight grew more intense, so did the drama. Rachel Zegler, cast as the iconic princess, found herself under siege by longtime fans outraged at her remarks about the original plot, by observers who felt she pushed updates too far, and perhaps most unexpectedly, by a comedic hurricane courtesy of South Park. In a matter of weeks, the conversation swelled from mild curiosity into a full-blown meltdown, complete with canceled interviews, rumored backstage feuds, and a corporate scramble within Disney to contain the crisis. This wasn't just another Hollywood tiff. It became an unsettling glimpse into how quickly a big-budget remake can unravel when multiple fronts collide at once. Today, we're taking a deep dive into that meltdown, shining a light on how one of Disney's most daring gambles spiraled into a saga of controversy, dramatic twists, and a looming showdown that might reshape how studios approach classic revivals in the future. Snow White isn't just any animated film. It's the genesis of Disney's entire feature-length legacy. A 1937 classic that broke new ground for animation and ignited a multi-billion-dollar dynasty. For countless generations, the story of the innocent princess, her 7 quirky companions, and an evil queen was a staple of childhood wonder. Its original hand-drawn beauty marked a turning point in film history. Because of that towering reputation, any attempt to remake Snow White is automatically a lightning rod for opinion. So when word got out that Disney intended to modernize the storyline in a 2025 adaptation, fans everywhere braced for radical updates. On paper, the idea sounded simple. Keep the core essence, fairy tale magic, romance, and a touch of danger, while refurbishing older themes that might not resonate with contemporary values. A fresh perspective could attract younger audiences, especially those hungry for heroines who do more than wait for a prince's rescue. In theory, it was a surefire strategy. Disney had successfully turned old animated hits into blockbuster live-action spectacles before. But Snow White is different. It's the studio's first true icon. Messing with it demanded both reverence and care. After all, this was no routine remake. It was the pioneer that opened the door to everything that followed in Disney's empire. And perhaps that weighty history was precisely why the meltdown that ensued became so explosive. Rachel Zegler, a talented singer and actress, was tapped to bring the princess to life. The announcement alone sparked a flurry of debate. Some were thrilled by the thought of a more diverse, self-empowered Snow White. Others worried the remake would discard the gentle fairy tale magic that made the original a treasured piece of cinema history. In those earliest days, though, the drama was limited to mild chatter on social media. No one suspected how quickly the conversation would escalate. Behind the scenes, Disney executives were confident they could follow the formula that had worked before. Cast big names, incorporate modern storytelling angles, pump up the promotional machine, and reap the box office rewards. Yet this time, fate had other plans. The meltdown began quietly, with a few offhand remarks from the star, and blossomed into something far more volatile when an unexpected comedic force decided to weigh in. What started as a bold reimagining soon teetered on the edge of scandal. By the time ordinary fans realized what was happening, tension both online and backstage had been cranked to a fever pitch. For Disney and Rachel Zegler, the real nightmare was only just beginning. The initial tremors arrived when Rachel Zegler made a series of public comments about the 1937 original. She described certain plot elements as outdated, suggesting Snow White deserved more active ambitions than merely waiting for a prince. At face value, These remarks sounded like standard Hollywood PR, a young actor proclaiming the new version would be modern and empowering. But to traditionalists, this felt like an insult to a formative piece of Disney history. Suddenly, social media chatter turned tense. Fans who cherished the original worried the new film might not just update the classic, it might bury it. Others applauded Rachel's candor, praising her for championing stronger female representation. In earlier Disney remakes, such a debate might have fizzled quickly, especially if the star took a gentler tone. Yet Rachel's comments were quite blunt, and the internet has a knack for latching onto bold sound bites. Not long after, more rumors cropped up. Insiders whispered that Rachel was clashing with creative teams, demanding script tweaks to emphasize Snow White's personal journey and downplay the romantic subplot. No one had official proof, but these whispers stirred the pot. It fed into the narrative that the production was meddling too recklessly with a classic that shaped cinematic history. Fans who might have shrugged off a passing remark now began to question the entire direction of the remake. Meanwhile, Disney's leadership recognized the risk. They'd already faced controversies around other recent releases. They were desperate to avoid another fiasco that could alienate core audiences, especially when box office yields were wavering. Executives tried to rein in the buzz quietly, urging the cast and crew to keep interviews positive and general. But Rachel was young, outspoken, and passionate about the changes she felt were necessary. The stage was set for a more serious collision, one that would erupt when one of pop culture's most famous satirical forces turned its gaze to the Snow White fiasco. Before long, it wasn't just fan forums griping about the star's perspective. Mainstream publications picked up on the friction, painting Rachel as the face of a new breed of Disney princess who openly criticizes the old guard. Some found this fresh and exciting. Others found it borderline sacrilegious. That tension alone could have fueled a million think pieces. But then South Park joined the conversation, and the entire situation took on a life of its own. For those who aren't familiar with South Park's track record, the show isn't afraid to ruffle feathers. Over the years, Trey Parker and Matt Stone have lampooned A-list celebrities, major corporations, and countless political movements, all with comedic precision that often leaves their targets reeling. They have a gift for spotting cultural flare-ups and exaggerating them into satirical gold. So when rumors emerged that South Park was cooking up a DEI special aimed at Hollywood's obsession with diversity, equity, and inclusion amid ongoing reboots and remakes, fans knew it could be big. Then came the fateful episode that took direct jabs at the Snow White controversy, featuring a blatant caricature of Rachel Zegler. In this comedic version, the animated character wouldn't stop trashing the classic film, proclaiming that her modern take was a social crusade meant to save pop culture. Almost instantly, clips went viral on social media platforms. Twitter threads and YouTube compilations dissected each comedic jab, noting how the exaggerated meltdown paralleled real remarks Rachel had made in interviews. Overnight, Dar's Snow White fiasco and Rachel Zegler started trending. Suddenly, what had been a simmering conversation among Disney loyalists became front-page news in entertainment circles. All over the internet, viewers debated whether the parody was spot-on or unfairly cruel. Those who felt protective of the original film saw the cartoon version of Rachel as exactly what the actress was in real life: a disrespectful, self-righteous newcomer messing with a classic. Others argued that the real Rachel Zegler was more nuanced, and that South Park had simply cherry-picked her worst quotes to amplify them for laughs. But the effect was undeniable. By mocking the star's criticisms of the 1937 film, South Park had poured gasoline on an already smoldering public relations issue. Suddenly, it wasn't just about a Disney remake. It was about comedic mockery and how mainstream culture perceived Rachel's stance. And this was just the beginning. Privately, sources indicated that Rachel was livid, feeling the show's portrayal turned her into a cartoonish villain. She allegedly felt blindsided, as if South Park had twisted her intentions into a caricature. Her anger only fueled more coverage. Entertainment websites pounced on rumors of her fury, while fans argued over whether she had a right to be upset or if she'd simply brought it on herself. Meanwhile, Disney higher-ups felt the heat. They'd dealt with unflattering portrayals before, but South Park's comedic reach is no joke. Silence is often the best strategy when South Park picks you as a target. Responding usually escalates, a satire. Yet in this case, the stakes felt higher than a typical comedic roast. Snow White was supposed to be a major release, not a punchline. Behind the scenes, frantic conversations took place. Would Disney issue a statement condemning the episode? Would Rachel confront the creators publicly? Or would everyone simply lie low, hoping the storm would pass? Little did they know the fiasco was going to intensify, leaving both the actress and the studio in an awkward place they never expected to inhabit. Disney was already struggling with other problems when the Snow White remake controversy exploded. Several of its big-budget titles underperformed, and the corporate leadership under Bob Iger was juggling the aftermath of shaky quarterly earnings. On top of that, streaming was proving a more complicated landscape than expected, forcing a rethink of how new content was developed and promoted. The last thing the studio needed was a meltdown involving one of its most iconic stories. Yet that's precisely what it got. As soon as South Park's parody hit the airwaves, Disney's PR apparatus went into overdrive. Some insiders claimed emergency meetings were called to figure out how to contain the situation and protect the film's reputation. Others suggested that the meltdown was so big, there was no quick fix, only damage control. Amid this chaos, rumors emerged that Rachel Zegler's talk show appearances and promotional interviews were being quietly canceled or postponed. Officially, Disney blamed scheduling conflicts, but industry observers suspected the real motive was to prevent any further controversial soundbites from the star. Rachel had a way of speaking candidly about the project that sometimes fanned flames rather than soothed them. This corporate clampdown might have been strategic, but it also sparked another layer of drama. Some fans saw it as censorship, claiming Disney was silencing Rachel's modern perspective. Others felt it was a necessary move to shield the film from even more negative buzz. Meanwhile, inside the company, stress levels spiked. Executives worried that each passing day of drama threatened to overshadow the film's actual content. It didn't help that Bob Iger, known for carefully orchestrated business moves, appeared to be stuck in a dilemma with no easy escape. If Disney took a public stand defending Rachel, the comedic roast from South Park would likely intensify, handing more fodder to critics. If the studio distanced itself from her remarks too openly, it could appear ungrateful or even hypocritical, given that it hired her to anchor this modern reinterpretation. In short, the meltdown had become a multi-headed beast. One head represented Rachel's bold statements about revamping tradition. Another head was the comedic angle, courtesy of South Park. A third was the internal tension at Disney, executives unsure how to juggle the need for progressive updates with the risk of alienating core fans. By the time the general public began seeing headline after headline about canceled promotional gigs, it was clear that Snow White 2025 was no longer just a film. It was a battleground for cultural, corporate, and creative conflicts that no one seemed able to untangle. While the meltdown raged around Rachel's public image and the studio's frantic maneuvers, another subplot emerged: rumors of a feud between Rachel Zegler and her co-star Gal Gadot, who portrayed the evil queen. Normally, having two high-profile stars would be a marketing dream. But behind the scenes, whispers suggested they clashed over lines, character direction, and general on-set dynamics. Fans caught wind of the tension when the two appeared at an awards ceremony and barely acknowledged each other. Some even replayed videos in slow motion to show how they seemed to avoid eye contact. Soon, social media lit up with theories. Maybe Gal resented Rachel's constant interviews overshadowing the film, or maybe Rachel thought Gal's star power took attention away from her big break. In the comedic realm, South Park's portrayal of a shrieking Snow White overshadowing an underused evil queen only added fuel to the fire. The episode depicted a scenario where Rachel's animated look-alike ranted about fixing society while ignoring everyone else's input, including the scowling queen. Fans wondered if that comedic jab was referencing the rumored friction directly. Disney publicly denied any real conflict, of course, but the buzz took on a life of its own. After all, if the lead actress and the villain in a major Disney movie were feuding, that spelled trouble for promotional tours and press junkets. It also signaled deeper issues within the production, where reshoots were supposedly taking place to balance the screenplay. Some suspected entire sequences highlighting the evil queen's grandeur were cut or reshaped after Rachel insisted Snow White's arc should remain central. All of this only magnified the meltdown's scope. Suddenly, the talk wasn't just about whether the new Snow White was too modern or whether South Park's parody was unfair. Now, it was also about two stars who allegedly couldn't stand each other, even though they were supposed to headline a film championing empowerment and transformation. The most curious part? Gal Gadot stayed relatively quiet, neither confirming nor denying any bad blood. Some interpreted that as professionalism, Others saw it as confirmation that something was indeed off. Meanwhile, Rachel faced the brunt of the speculation once again. If the Meltdown had a poster child, it was unquestionably her. Any other controversies within the production seemed to orbit around her remarks, her rumored frustrations, and her complicated relationship with Disney. As each new detail dripped into the public sphere, be it legitimate news or unverified gossip, social media erupted. Hashtags about the Snow White remake trended regularly, with users voicing everything from heartfelt support for Rachel's progressive princess to utter disdain for her perceived arrogance. Every time a snippet of video surfaced, an awkward press clip, a cryptic tweet, or a comedic meme, online audiences dissected it like forensic experts, searching for hidden meaning. One day, a rumored cryptic post from Rachel's account suggested she felt silenced. Another day, leaked talk show schedules revealed last-minute cancellations. Fans and critics alike started piecing together a narrative in which Rachel was being muzzled by Disney, whether for her own protection or for corporate expediency. Others suggested she was doubling down behind closed doors, threatening legal action if her contractually guaranteed promotional appearances were blocked. Amid the digital cacophony, the Meltdown took on an almost mythic quality. It was no longer just about a young actress voicing modern views on a classic tale. It was about a star colliding with a massive corporation at a time when both were vulnerable, all while comedic masterminds poked fun from the sidelines. For many fans, the sheer volume of rumors, official denials, and half-confirmed reports became more entertaining than any behind-the-scenes DVD featurette could ever be. In this dizzying atmosphere, it became nearly impossible to separate fact from fiction. Did Rachel and Gal Gadot truly butt heads? Or was it a minor disagreement blown out of proportion? Were entire chunks of the movie being rewritten because of test audience feedback? Or were they just normal post-production tweaks? Was Bob Iger personally intervening to keep a lid on the controversy? Or were those daily crisis meetings standard corporate procedure? No one had definitive answers, but that didn't stop the frenzy of posts, threads, and tweets from fueling the Meltdown. Rumors of an impending South Park DEI special that would revisit the Snow White fiasco only escalated the mania. If a single episode mocking Rachel's comments had caused such an uproar, what chaos might erupt if Trey Parker and Matt Stone decided to double down with a dedicated special? Through it all, the debate stayed white-hot. Was the new Snow White a bold step forward or a betrayal of a classic? And more importantly, had Rachel Zegler's vocal stance on modernization triggered a meltdown that no studio damage control campaign could contain? Just when it seemed the controversy had reached a peak, fresh news emerged. Trey Parker and Matt Stone were reportedly developing a DEI special as a sequel to their Panderverse storyline. The rumor suggested this new project would skewer Hollywood's growing trend of recasting beloved characters to tick diversity boxes, sometimes at the expense of coherent storytelling. And guess which film was rumored to be right in the crosshairs? Snow White 2025, with Rachel Zegler as the prime comedic target. Early chatter hinted that Paramount was fully on board with the endeavor, eager to see how far the famously irreverent creators could push the envelope. Meanwhile, Disney, particularly its leadership, was in a mild panic. A second round of pointed satire might not merely poke fun at Rachel's interview quotes, it could lampoon the entire Meltdown, from canceled appearances to rumored corporate gag orders. The possibility of a sequel satire left fans torn between excitement and dread. On one hand, South Park had proven adept at dissecting pop culture fiascos with biting humor. On the other hand, another wave of comedic mockery could overshadow any genuine attempts by Disney to salvage the film's public image. With online chatter swirling that Rachel was privately furious at even the suggestion, tensions climbed higher. Insiders whispered that Bob Iger and other top executives were investigating whether there was any leverage to halt or soften the show's portrayal. But historically, taking legal or public relations action against South Park only amplifies its comedic potency. If Disney tried to intervene, they risked giving Trey Parker and Matt Stone even more material. In short, the Meltdown was poised to escalate yet again. All eyes were on whether the rumored special would indeed zero in on the Snow White fiasco, adding a fresh layer of comedic fuel to an already raging fire. For some watchers, it felt like a dark comedic irony. A mega studio that had once cornered the market on childhood wonder was now pinned under the satirical microscope of a cartoon that loved to expose corporate hypocrisy. As the release date inched closer, a fundamental question loomed. Could the actual film rise above this sea of controversy? Historically, some productions have been saved by strong content, quality that overshadows backstage theatrics. If the final cut of Snow White was magical, emotionally resonant, and genuinely innovative, audiences might forgive a tumultuous development cycle. But many doubted such an outcome. The negativity felt relentless, with each wave of rumors overshadowing any chance for the film itself to speak. Plus, it wasn't just the star who had stumbled into trouble. The corporate apparatus also seemed paralyzed, unsure how to pivot its marketing strategy when almost every interview risked fueling another scandal. For Rachel Zegler, the stakes were monumental. She was a talented performer with a bright future, until the Meltdown threatened to typecast her as the actress who disrespected Disney's biggest classic. If Snow White tanked, would that tarnish her career trajectory for years to come? Or might she pivot to other studios, seeking roles that let her escape the fiasco's long shadow? Meanwhile, for Disney, the Meltdown served as a warning sign. The strategy of reimagining beloved tales with modern spins wasn't automatically guaranteed to succeed. Tweak too much, and you trigger a wave of resistance from traditionalists. Tweak too little, and you risk accusations of stagnation. Finding the right balance demands careful messaging, especially when the star is outspoken and social media is eager to pounce on every quote. Fans continued to argue passionately on both sides. Some insisted the Meltdown was overblown, that, once the film arrived, people would see it as a refreshing update to a musty old story. Others predicted a disaster so colossal, it might force Disney to rethink live-action remakes altogether. The reality lay somewhere in the messy middle, a production that might still shine through if the creative decisions truly resonated, but one that faced an uphill battle in terms of optics. Looking back at how this entire Meltdown evolved, it's remarkable how quickly a single remark about an outdated plot can snowball into canceled appearances, alleged lawsuits, rumored feuds, and savage satirical takedowns. The synergy of factors, Rachel Zegler's unfiltered comments, South Park's comedic precision, Disney's internal turmoil, and an internet always ready to amplify controversy, created a perfect storm that few major productions ever face. The big question remains: will Snow White 2025 ever escape the shadow of this Meltdown? Even if the final product dazzles, the conversation around its release has been so heavily shaped by disputes, mockery, and corporate mishaps that some moviegoers might walk in with biases already firmly set. If they see the film at all, they'll likely be bracing for controversy instead of experiencing the storyline with fresh eyes. At the heart of it all is Rachel Zegler, who might have intended to use her platform for constructive criticism and modern representation. Instead, she found herself labeled as a rebellious new actor who disrespected a foundational Disney treasure. Whether that label is fair or not, the public's perception can be stubborn, and the comedic portrayal by South Park only cemented that impression for countless viewers. Bob Iger and Disney, meanwhile, face a broader reckoning about how, and whether, to continue overhauling classic properties. There's an undeniable desire to keep these stories relevant for new generations, but the Meltdown teaches that blindly charging ahead without careful messaging can backfire. And once the public narrative spirals out of control, even a powerhouse like Disney struggles to contain it. South Park, for its part, has always thrived on highlighting absurdities. By zeroing in on a conflict that combined corporate rebranding, fan outrage, and a star's passionate beliefs, it found the ultimate comedic fodder. And if the rumored DEI special is indeed on the horizon, the Meltdown we've witnessed thus far may only be Act 1 in a longer saga of satire. For now, the story remains unfinished, a swirling vortex of speculation, swirling around whether more talk shows will be canceled, whether a second South Park roast is imminent, and whether Rachel Zegler might eventually confront the creators or the studio in some public way. One thing is certain: this is no ordinary controversy, and it goes well beyond a single actress or a single remake. It's a flashpoint in the ongoing debate over how Hollywood should handle timeless stories in an age where cultural values shift faster than any studio can keep up with. We're left with a final, lingering question. Will the Snow White 2025 remake ever stand on its own merits, or will it forever be overshadowed by the avalanche of drama that preceded it? The answer may lie in whether audiences can separate an updated fairy tale from the real-world fiasco that erupted around it, or whether the Meltdown itself becomes the most memorable chapter in this modern retelling. One way or another, we're witnessing a moment that could reshape the trajectory of Disney remakes and the public's willingness to embrace them. Perhaps in a world that loves both progress and nostalgia, the greatest challenge is finding a stable footing between those two opposing forces. Whatever happens, The Meltdown will be remembered as a cautionary tale, a testament to what transpires when an iconic legend, a passionate star, a famously edgy cartoon, and a jittery corporation collide in the swirling winds of modern media. In other words, this is one fairy tale that nobody saw coming, and its conclusion could redefine how our favorite childhood stories are brought back to life in the years ahead.